Peter Thiel teams up with In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm. Alex Karp has said on record that the intended clients of Palantir from the beginning was the CIA. But it's not about if you're doing something wrong now or not. It's about an algorithm thinking if you will do something wrong in the future.
Whitney Webb recently exposed Palantir's evil scheme to deprive us of our rights and control us on the Peter McCormick podcast, and she gets into the horrifying consequences of this pre-crime program and how this isn't just dystopian fantasy anymore. This is actually becoming reality. So let's get her take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
You're not a fan of Peter Thiel, are you?
No, I'm not. One of the few in independent media that does not like him. We can get into that later.
Can we get into that now?
Sure, if you want.
Yeah. Why? I mean, look, I can probably guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I guess let's start off here. So I would argue that neoconservatives have very successfully rebranded, and I think Peter Thiel is a very important example of that. So Peter Thiel... as an example, Palantir has been in the news, right? He's a co-founder of that. So how was Palantir created? Well, there was this company that was being run, or not company, sorry. It was a government program after 9/11 called Total Information Awareness. It was housed within the Pentagon's DARPA office. And the man they chose to put in charge of that was John Poindexter, who was the highest ranking member of the Reagan administration to be indicted for his role in Iran-Contra.
He was Reagan's national security advisor, by the way.
Which, again, the continuity of government stuff is relevant here. So eventually, it launches and whatever, but people are outraged by it because, as they rightly pointed out, it would eliminate constitutional protections of Americans' rights, specifically the right to privacy, among other things. It was a huge surveillance dragnet, and its goal wasn't just to surveil everything. It was to predict crime before it happens, predict terror attacks before it happens. I mean, it's like Minority Report was basically the end goal of it. And so after all the pushback, they changed the name to Terrorist Information Awareness and try and rebrand. Oh, it's not total. We are still gonna surveil innocent Americans, but we're focusing on the terrorists. They did all this.
That's how they established warrantless wiretapping, expanded upon it during the Bush administration. They said, hey, we already used these unconstitutional violations to go after drug dealers. Why not terrorists? The same thing is true when it comes to the surveillance state. They justify it and rebrand it despite the fact that the policies still remain the same.
Stuff to try and rebrand it, but Congress defunded it. But hidden in that bill, Congress allowed aspects of it to continue. And essentially, I argue in my work on Palantir that an effort was made to privatize large aspects of TIA as Palantir. Because when Alex Karp and Peter Thiel were setting it up, they went to John Poindexter through this guy named Richard Pearl, who was a long-standing neocon actor with very extensive ties also to the state of Israel. He was caught in the 70s giving classified information to Israel's embassy and should have gone to jail and somehow did not.
Richard Pearl is one of the most vile neocons in existence. He wrote with another prominent neocon the memo that was used to justify a lot of the regime change operations that the U.S. and Israel endeavored to collaborate on, and that's called the Clean Break Memo, a new strategy for securing the realm. Richard Pearl is vile. He's never seen a war he didn't want to wage, and he was involved in surveillance too. What do you know?
And had a lot of ties also to Netanyahu's first government. And Richard Pearl is the guy that connected Thiel Karp to Poindexter, and they basically wanted to talk to Poindexter because they wanted to recreate Total Information Awareness and saw him as the godfather of modern mass surveillance.
Yeah, they did, and actually In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's kind of venture capitalist firm, it gave the seed money to Palantir in, I believe, 2002 or 2003. Its initial funding came from the CIA. So Palantir is actually the child of the CIA. The CIA was always intended to be its client, and it was, I think, for the first 5 or 6 years, exclusively the only client of Palantir. This is Peter Thiel's brainchild. Peter Thiel, gave some of the seed money, but a lot of it was provided by the CIA, by In-Q-Tel. And guess who's a child of Peter Thiel and the whole Palantir machine? J.D. Vance, the current vice president, is the understudy of Peter Thiel. He is primarily probably there because of his connections to Thiel, and what Thiel's doing on the Palantir side hopefully will come up in the future that J.D. Vance is going to have to answer for this. It hasn't been brought to the attention of the mainstream media very much, but dissident circles are talking about it.
And in doing so, they basically, Peter Thiel teams up with In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm. Alex Karp has said on record that the intended clients of Palantir from the beginning was the CIA. And, right. The CIA was their first client for their first 6 years as a company. Their top developers went to Langley, Virginia, which is CIA headquarters, every 2 weeks to show the CIA their product and have them tweak it to their liking. And during that period of time, one of the top people at the CIA that would have been involved in that is this guy named Alan Wade, who was also intimately involved with total information awareness. And if you look at how total information awareness was described, its privacy protections, it's exactly the same as the way Palantir sold their stuff later on. So there's an insane amount of overlap. And what's crazy here is that Alan Wade, a few years prior, had created a Homeland Security software program that was also pre-crime-esque and similar to what Palantir ended up doing. It was called Kiliad, and he teamed up with Christine Maxwell to do that. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what this is a pre-crime program designed to suss out potential future crimes and deduce people based on something akin to like a social credit score that determines that. That was Minority Report, and we all watched that in horror. This is a dystopian future, but could that ever happen here? Well, they're building it here in front of us, it seems to be, and it's prominent people associated with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, people that Trump himself has elevated. So the Palantir story is being so undercovered and overshadowed, and I'm glad someone like Whitney Webb is covering it.
I wonder what the Whitney Webb file in Palantir is like.
I'm sure it's long.
It's got to know.
They probably know I have a mold allergy and all sorts of stuff.
And that I'm visiting you, having a conversation.
Well, I mean, that's their job, right?
Well, it's funny. So let me.
But it's about pre-crime. It's about predicting stuff before it happens, and that's what I think a lot of people miss about Palantir, because a lot of people say about mass surveillance. Well, I have nothing to hide. But it's not about if you're doing something wrong now or not. It's about an algorithm thinking if you will do something wrong in the future.
Yeah, and all those people that say, I have nothing to hide and only criminals would have something to hide, well, then give me your social security number. Just give it to me right now, on air, disclose it for all of us. I think you have something to hide, and I think you have other things to hide than just your social security number too, things you don't want the public to know. Things you might not want the government to know, your closest peers, let alone strangers to know. So that whole line of reasoning is a farce, and it really shreds the Fourth Amendment, which is supposed to be a safeguard against unreasonable searches and seizures. Well, the NSA's bulk data collection program, PRISM, which Snowden exposed, sure did away with that if it wasn't done away with long before that, because the church commission was set up to get to the bottom of this in the 70s. But, we're seeing a totalitarian future being built in front of our eyes with so little attention to it. And it really is horrifying. This pre-crime thing, this is no joke. This is coming to fruition.
I think I would definitely be on that algorithm. I think you would be as well.
Well, the problem is that pre-crime has been inching along, and actually a lot of people in Epstein world, I mean, obviously Peter Thiel and Epstein had a relationship. More came out about this earlier this year after, Thiel kind of tried to minimize his ties a few months earlier. But Peter Thiel's Founders Fund co-invested in this company with Epstein and Wexner and Ehud Barak called Carbine that basically had a pre-crime component to it. And Carbine has now colonized an insane amount of 911 emergency call services systems like throughout the U.S. And
if you're not familiar, Ehud Barak was the former prime minister of Israel and head of IDF intelligence for a time. He spent prolonged periods living at Epstein's house. He essentially was one of Epstein's best friends. 30 plus visits that we know of to his Manhattan mansion that he got from Les Wexner, who himself was a big benefactor to basically every pro-Israeli cause under the sun, not only in here in the United States, but also in Israel.
Are the main company at the forefront if this legislation in the U.S. is passed. It's called Next Generation, or NG 911, where they're going to basically federalize and centralize all 911 emergency call systems. And then when you centralize it, you can just put one company in charge. They've changed the board a lot since the Epstein scandal because Ehud Barak was the chair and there were people on the board that were tied to Epstein, including a woman that he allegedly took to the UK to sort of soften up some U.S. senators whose identity is still unknown before the Iraq war vote. But it's a story for another time. And, some other figures tied to Epstein were on the board, and it would formerly been created by veterans of Israeli intelligence. But now they only have one of the Israeli intelligence co-founders on the board. The others have left to do other things. One of them now works for Eric Prince, I believe. And they've kind of gone their separate ways, and they've tried to rebrand as a more American-looking company.
Of course they have, and surrounding themselves with people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump is one method to which they've hidden things that would otherwise become controversies because of their closeness to the current U.S. administration and current U.S. president. And I also want to add, we know a lot of what we do about Palantir and its past and its connections to people of prominence, both in Israel and the United States, because of WikiLeaks, because the heroic journalist Julian Assange and his organization leaked information about this organization in 2010 that has provided a lot of the basis we know about their operations, their purpose, and the pre-crime program.
Yes. I think they added Trump's former head of DHS, Christy Nielsen, I think is her name, to the board, and they have Michael Chertoff, the former one of the early heads of DHS under Bush. So
it's like so everything and everyone is captured, and everything is corrupt. I mean, are they really good
I think that's kind of a simplification. I think not everything has always been like that. I think this particular group, once they got their hands on power, it's a faction. They've been consolidating control for a long time. And I think the advent of technology, big tech sort of taking over our lives, has really facilitated that.
Yeah, it has since, 2003 when Palantir was born, and we know that the social media giants tried to do whatever they could to censor opponents of the current regime at that time. People talking and having critiques against the COVID regime, the efficacy of vaccines, etc. That was a crackdown, and we know about those revelations because of the Twitter files. Well, big tech's doing the same thing when it comes to the surveillance world. So it's not a censorship industrial complex only, it's a surveillance industrial complex too.
Because the whole conclusion to my book is that why would you take someone like Epstein down? You don't need people like him anymore to compromise people, because all of our lives are increasingly online. So if they want something on you, they can just harvest it off through, whether it's, Palantir, it ends up in your Palantir database. Basically, it's sucked up by the NSA or GCHQ or any of these other agencies. And you're profiled based on it. Or if there isn't incriminating stuff, they can plant incriminating stuff on your devices.
So you're screwed either way.
If they want to screw you, sure. Yeah. And so it's much easier to consolidate power under those circumstances.
Do you think there are...
And they elevate people who are compromised to positions of power. How did a guy like Dennis Hastert become Speaker of the House of the United States when it was known that he was a pedophile? Years before getting to that position.
Good question, but hey, it's a big criminal pedophilic club that I want no part of. I seek only to undermine those villains that are waging wars overseas in our name, building and expanding this criminal surveillance state here, plunging us into debt, ramping up the inflation that Americans feel whenever they go get groceries or go to the gas station or, buy health insurance. All of that is because of this criminal element in the government. And this is a massive conflict of interest for the Trump administration, too. Homeland Security, the Homeland Security advisor, Stephen Miller, was divulged to have owned between $100,000 and $250,000 worth of Palantir stock, depending on what the price of it is at the time. And he is, one of the most trusted advisors of Donald Trump, closely knit to Trump, very involved in the administration. And then internal divulgences of other materials related to the Trump administration show that at least 10 other officials in Trump's general orbit also own significant amounts of Palantir stock. So, it's no wonder why this is a big problem. It's a huge conflict of interest, and it's undermining Americans and our privacy rights if this comes to fruition in some. It's a big, general, centralized database that will aggregate information that the NSA has on us with everything related to 911 calls and IRS information and Social Security information, all into a centralized database, and you're given an individual identifier. It's a horrifying prospect. Very few people are doing good work on it. Whitney Webb is one. The Free Thought Project, with my friend Jason Bassler heading it, has done a lot of good information and a lot of good work exposing this too. So check them out. But I do want to hear from you. How big of a concern is this? Why is the Palantir story being buried so hard right now, including by the liberal establishment? Let me know in the comments down below. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to Peter McCormick. Love this interview. Thank you, Peter. Great job here. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can join and become a supporter of this channel. And in return, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.